Ancient scrolls that were buried in volcanic ash are now being deciphered 2,000 years later.
A scroll buried under volcanic ash for nearly 2,000 years has just been read. Not by human hands, but by a machine. And what it revealed wasn't history. It was a warning. Across the ruins of lost civilizations, from the Indus Valley to Mayan temples, languages long thought dead are speaking again. Not with poetry, not with peace, but with messages of fire, silence, and collapse. For centuries, scholars tried and failed to break these codes. Symbols carved into stone, etched into bone, and burned into papyrus remained locked in mystery. Until artificial intelligence arrived. AI was designed to recognize faces, predict ads, and process data. But now it is cracking open voices that should have stayed buried. And what happens when those voices are no longer whispers of the past, but predictions for the future? The first terrifying discovery came from a city frozen in fire, Herculaneum. In the year 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius erupted with unstoppable fury. Within hours, Pompeii and Herculaneum were buried beneath ash and fire. While Pompeii left plastered corpses and ruined streets, Herculaneum preserved something far stranger, an entire library carbonized into blackened scrolls. For centuries, these scrolls mocked scholars. They were too fragile to unroll, too burned to read. Every attempt ended in dust. Historians called them lost forever. But in 2023, the impossible happened. Artificial intelligence, paired with microscopic scanning, virtually unrolled the papyrus. Suddenly, words unseen for 2,000 years flickered back to life. The first word revealed was simple, almost innocent: porphyros, Greek for purple, the color of kings and power. But as more text emerged, the fragments darkened. They spoke of fire returning, silence imposed, and cycles of collapse. Who was bold enough to write such words, and why were they hidden beneath a city destroyed by flames?
The scroll belonged to Philodemus, an Epicurean thinker who lived before the eruption of Vesuvius. He wasn't writing legends or myths. He was questioning the powers of his time. Epicureans believed the gods did not rule over human affairs. They rejected fear, fate, and blind obedience. To rulers who thrived on control, these ideas were dangerous. Hidden within his writing were phrases that startled researchers: strategic quietude, the cycle of smoke and renewal, and when the light goes out, the cleansing begins. Were these symbols of inner peace, or veiled warnings of fire, silence, and collapse? What makes it unsettling is that Philodemus wrote this decades before Vesuvius erupted. His scroll wasn't a record of disaster. It may have been a prediction. But this isn't the only voice AI has revived. Across the world, other lost scripts are now whispering the same warnings. Philodemus was not alone. Across continents, AI is reviving the words of civilizations that vanished long before Rome. In the Indus Valley, symbols carved 4,500 years ago remained undeciphered, but machines now detect patterns that hint at cycles of water and famine. On Easter Island, the lost Rongo-Rongo glyphs, once thought decorative, may hide warnings written just before the island's collapse. And the mysterious Etruscans of Italy left inscriptions about omens and catastrophe, texts that Rome itself tried to silence. What makes this terrifying is the repetition. Civilizations that never met, separated by oceans and centuries, left behind messages about silence, suppression, and fire. The same motifs return again and again, like echoes across time. But AI does not stop at fragments. It can see what no human eye can: hidden layers of erased texts, buried warnings that someone deliberately tried to destroy. Not every lost script was buried in ash or carved in stone. Some were deliberately erased. In monasteries and temples, scribes scraped away older texts to replace them with prayers or laws. For centuries, those earlier voices were invisible, until AI stepped in. With tools like reflectance transformation imaging and neural reconstruction, machines now detect the faint grooves of vanished ink. Whole passages of forbidden knowledge are reappearing beneath later writings. Some speak of collapse, others describe rituals meant to control fire, silence dissent, or appease unseen forces. These were not texts lost by accident. They were hidden because someone feared what they said. Yet now, machines without fear are uncovering them, line by line. And among the most unsettling discoveries are voices once silenced not by nature, but by power. Languages that rulers worked to bury forever. Some languages vanished not because of time, but because rulers chose silence. In ancient Italy, the Etruscans practiced rituals of prophecy and divination. Rome absorbed their culture but outlawed many of their rites, burying their sacred texts. Their warnings of cycles and catastrophe disappeared with them. Centuries later in China, women forbidden from education created their own secret script, Nushu. Passed quietly from mother to daughter, it carried songs of sorrow, loss, and warnings of hidden grief. Scholars thought it was poetry. But AI translations revealed darker truths, lines about bitter winds and coming sorrow woven into the moonlight. These weren't harmless words. They were cries of resistance. And history shows us when voices are too dangerous, they are silenced. But silence doesn't last forever. Because now, AI is reviving every suppressed voice, and the message they bring may not be what we expect. AI doesn't understand myth or metaphor. It only sees patterns, symbols that repeat, structures that echo, words that return across time. And what it sees is unsettling. From the Mayan glyphs describing the Great Thirsting, to the oracle bones of China asking about plague and famine, to the scrolls of Herculaneum whispering of silence and fire, the motifs align: collapse, drought, suppression, renewal through destruction.
These civilizations never met. They shared no trade, no speech, no scripture. Yet their final words carry the same warnings, like a chorus across continents. Were they describing natural cycles? Or were they all watching the same shadow move across history? Machines cannot answer that, but they are making the voices louder, too loud to ignore. And the closer we listen, the more one question grows. What happens when these ancient prophecies match the world we live in now? The warnings may be ancient, but they sound strangely familiar. Fire returning, silence imposed, collapse after excess. These aren't just fragments of forgotten empires. They read like headlines today. Wildfires consuming nations, political censorship silencing voices, droughts and famines reshaping entire regions. Even the sense of cycles, of history rising and falling, mirrors the fears of our own age. If these texts are prophecy, they are not predicting some distant future. They are describing patterns that are unfolding again, right now. And the silence of the past may be breaking to remind us what comes next. But here lies the danger. AI doesn't stop. It keeps decoding, revealing, exposing. It doesn't ask whether humanity is ready to hear what's been hidden.
And soon, the question will not be what the ancients wrote, but what AI decides to show us next. For thousands of years, warnings were buried under ash, erased from parchment, or silenced by power. But machines feel no fear. They do not pause at danger or prophecy. They read what they are given, and they keep going. AI doesn't ask whether knowledge is forbidden. It doesn't stop at the words, "do not open."
It pushes through the seals, exposing texts that rulers, priests, or even fate itself may have tried to bury. And that is where the terror lies. If the ancients hid these words because they feared their power, then every line pulled into the digital light may be breaking a seal that should have stayed closed. The final question is not what AI can read, but whether humanity is prepared for what comes next. Across every scroll, tablet, and fragment, one truth rises. These scripts were not just lost, they were silenced. And now, through the cold logic of machines, their voices are rising again. Fire, silence, collapse, renewal. But prophecy is never safe. Once spoken, it spreads. Once read, it cannot be unread. The ancients may have buried their warnings under ash, stone, and time itself. But AI has no hesitation. It has begun breaking seals humanity was never meant to touch. So the question is no longer, can we read the past? It's, should we? Because if the cycle is real, then every word pulled into the light brings us one step closer to the moment when history and prophecy finally collide. And maybe that moment has already begun.